thrilled to have a 10-minute spotlight presentation from one of our new sponsors, Linkfluence. And we have Benjamin Duvall, Insights Director of the CPG category over at Linkfluence, here to take a few minutes just to talk to us about what they're cooking over there. I think it's understanding consumers in a volatile, no-touch world. Is that correct, Benjamin?
That's right, John. Thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, well, I'll let you take things from here, but looking forward to your presentation. Take it away, sir.
All right. Well, let me just pull up the presentation here. It'll just take me a second. All right. Cool. So, yeah, I mean, some tremendous conversations that are super relevant for what we're doing. You know, Scott Finlow yesterday was talking about how important it is to be, you know, focused on consumer insights in order to be relevant, to have that empathic message, democratization of insights. And, you know, just now with Curls, we also talked about agility and how important that is. So, you know, I'm just going to kind of roll off that tiff. And first of all, I want to kick off with a story. You know, earlier this year, I was, you know, I got a call from a friend who was working in CPG in Toronto, was telling me, you know, people were lining up outside, you know, stores right now to buy White Claw. You know, what the hell is going on? It's the middle of winter. This is something that's supposed to peak during the summer. You know, why is this happening? You know, everybody had a theory, but the question on, you know, people's tongues were, you know, is this a flash in the pan? Is this going to be a trend? You know, typically, you know, this is the realm of products like Bacardi Breezer, Smirnoff Ice. You know, this is something that peaks a little bit in the summer and goes away. But, you know, we didn't see that. We saw the sales start to kind of, you know, platform into 2020, and clearly something different was happening. You know, so, you know, we know today that, you know, there's something much bigger happening, and all the big boys have doubled down, and this is apparently, you know, a new category in and of itself. You know, this is a category that outsold vodka by volume last year, and it's kind of put a lot of people on the back foot. Something that's blown away, you know, canned wines and also the, you know, the craft beer trend. So the question is, how has this happened? You know, the analysts will say, you know, we saw this coming. There's a rise in wellness. People are looking at low ABV, low calorie, the low no movement, and also gluten free. But there was actually something more complex happening. You know, this specific, well, you know, White Claw in specific, but also, you know, the category in general was becoming a calling card for a certain group of people online. And if we look at these, you know, digital consumer groups, these psychographic groups, it's not just one group of people. It's not just the no laws partiers. We're looking at, you know, people who are drinking it outdoors while they're active. We're looking at families who are drinking this in the park, whether they should or shouldn't be. You know, we're looking at people who are more sophisticated. And what we've really seen is that there is, you know, a fragmentation and accelerating change of digital cultures that's happening. These are people that are groups that are insular, they're overlapping, they're influenced by each other. And it's related to a lot of what we've been talking about the last couple of days about, you know, authenticity and having a real message that, you know, it comes off as something that's true. So coming into the pandemic, where are we now? There's some brands that have had tremendous success, you know, because of the environment. Peloton is one of them. But within that cultural dynamic, people are going to work, they're getting off work, and whereas they would have gone to their spinning class or, you know, maybe have gone to their CrossFit class, get grounded in reality, you know, and not just with, you know, all the hype that's happening on social. That's not happening. So, you know, these groups, you know, these digital tribes are becoming, you know, more and more powerful. And of course, this is not something that happened overnight. It may feel like it, but, you know, we look at statistics like this, which you've all seen before, the the use of attention of mobile devices outpaced TV in the last couple of years. So this is definitely something new, and this is something that's here to stay. Now, when we talk about authenticity, this is very much bound out in brands trying to find their message. And we talked about that YouTube video that everybody has seen, which is the mashup of the television advertisements with the same piano score and the same imagery. Brands have been trying to be authentic and been trying to look at their voice, and the urban murals, the branded murals are one attempt at this. And we're really trying to squeeze water from a stone in some cases. And trying to find out how do we communicate, how do we find out what consumers actually want, how do we be authentic, and how that voice. This is just an example from last week. Planters, Mr. Peanut, they killed him off in January, came back, baby Peanut was born, and then all of a sudden we see Peanut Jr. is at the bar trying to buy a beer. And people are just not having it. They're hearing brands talking about themselves, trying to create this own environment, this own message. And on the right hand side, you see from a social listening, social intelligence perspective, how people are responding to that. It's overwhelmingly negative. And then the other big factor, of course, is how consumers are buying. And these are stats that we've talked about, you guys have all seen. And I think the most interesting one here is that a quarter of consumers, they want to be loyal, but they're not able to, because in the new channels they can't find the products that they were looking for. So this is all part of a larger trend of digital transformation. And whereas Harvard Business Review said this is going to happen in 10 years, we might be seeing something like this happening in the next few years, where there's going to be a big overhaul of the Fortune 500. And those who are able to be focused on consumers in an agile way that is adapting, and they're able to find an honest voice and empathy, are the ones that will get attention from consumers. So coming back to our mission as marketers, how do we stay in touch? If the beginning of this process is insight, and like Scott and Mahisha were saying, we have to be there, either at the events, or we have to be there with these ethnographic studies in stores, home visits, focus groups. How can we do this and stay in touch if those things aren't possible? So in this volatile world, we basically have three constants as CPG professionals. Regardless of how fast things change, we will always need to understand people before marketing to them. As tech adoption accelerates, the good news is we'll have access to the same public data that people use to share their needs. So we're in an environment where people are actually putting what they need out there. We just have to learn how to be able to understand it. And we have a kind of an unfair advantage in the CP industry. People will always need to be able to eat and drink. So we're in a much better, stronger position than some of these other industries like automotive and travel, for example. So Forrester actually has taken a position on this, and they're basically saying that we're moving into a new era of consumer insights, and that's called AI-enabled consumer intelligence. And this is basically a rejuvenation of the social listening industry, where instead of just focusing on fans, likes, followers, did people engage with my content? Did they not engage in my content? Which is basically how my brand is performing. It's more about, what are the qualitative aspects of what people are saying across those 300 million social media channels? What are these psychographic groups? How do they appeal to each other in terms of their identity? What's important to them and what's not? And these are, deeper insights that are more the realm of classical methodologies rather than social listening. So that's the future. I only have 10 minutes to share with you guys today, so I thought I'd get, concrete and give you some examples. And to inspire you, here's a few examples of, things a couple brands are doing. So one, Danone, for example, looking at finding an authentic voice that resounds with consumers. We've actually noticed that this phrase, finding a new start, there's more mention of finding a new start now in the last couple of months than there was over New Year's in January. And so, brands like Danone and Activia can actually look into that conversation and find out what are the subtopics in that? And what do people mean when they're talking about a new start? And they've put together, some content that's modeled around, different segments to, have an honest communication with that. And this isn't just about a campaign getting people to submit content. It's actually first listening and then creating the content. So that's one example. Small brands like Sparrow Foods, immunity and defense is very important right now, for obvious reasons. But what does that mean to certain people? If you listen to topics about immunity and defense, one of the big ones is gut health. And there's lots of content on gut health. There's lots of inspiration. And people are looking for, recipes and looking for lifestyle advice around having a healthy gut. So those are a couple of examples in terms of communication. Audience and segmentation is another huge one. Porsche is looking at the sector of e-mobility. In fact, all big premium automotive brands right now are basically repositioning themselves. Toyota next year is releasing their entire line around electric vehicles. But people who buy Porsche traditionally are not the people who are going to be buying electric vehicles tomorrow. We're looking at, primarily older white males, it might be golfers, there's a stereotype. But if it's going to be millennials and Gen Z, it's not just going to be one type of people. And understanding those types of people are important. So they're looking at, how do the urban technocrats, those guys who are the geeks or, the digital nomads, what do they look at? Do they look at performance? Do they look at design? For families, are they looking at the environmental impact? And being able to both design a product and communications around those tribes in real time is critical to surviving that transformation of the industry. Women, looking at women consumers is a specific subsegment of that. And so there's actually sub-tribes within that. Traditionally, demographic segmentation might look at, digital women or driven women in that category as a single voice. But the reality is more complex, and it's of course becoming a lot more complex. The last concrete example I'd like to leave you guys with is full circle. Let's go back to those analysts who were talking about what's driving the sudden boom in hard seltzers. And there are some obvious things that we talked about, like low calorie, gluten-free, and low alcohol. But a lot of this has to do with the lifestyle values. So being able to understand how people, identify in their various subgroups, whether they're looking at, trending social media content, pop culture, whether it's fun or togetherness, or there's other things that drive them, is really critical. And this is all something, although I've shown you guys snapshots of reports, this is all something that's been driven from data, massive amounts of data with real-time AI and analysis. And this is an example, for example, of the ESPN Last Dance, which was a tremendous success, and it filled the gap of a lack of attention around having real sports content. But this is a view where you can see how that resonated with other topics that are happening in society, and how that might influence future programming or communication with consumers. So we'll leave you with that. We have a report coming out next month around hygiene. If you guys can follow this, the QR code should work on pretty much everybody's camera. You'll have access to that report and you'll get it for free. So that's what I got for you today. Thanks a lot, John.
That's great. Hey, thanks so much, Benjamin. Would you be willing, we really don't have time for questions, but would you be willing to put your contact information into the chat box here so that everyone watching today can reach out to you with questions if they need to?
Always good advice for the end of a presentation. Thanks. I'll do that.
All right. Hey, fantastic. Thanks again for joining us. We're thrilled to have you guys, a new face to our events, and we hope it's the start of many more to come. Thanks for a great presentation. We appreciate it.